I want to tell you about the day before because I think you need to understand what my life looked like from the outside and from the inside before any of this makes sense. From the outside, it looked fine. More than fine, honestly. I had an apartment I'd kept clean for 3 years, a job that paid well enough, people who called me on my birthday. I showed up to things. I replied to messages. I laughed when laughing was appropriate. From the inside, I had this feeling, one I'd gotten so used to that I'd almost stopped noticing it, like being slightly underwater. Not drowning, just muffled. Like there was a layer of something between me and everything happening around me, and I couldn't quite break through it, and somewhere along the way, I'd stopped trying. I hadn't always been like this. There was a version of me, 10 years ago, maybe 12, who had plans. Not vague, dreamy plans, real ones. A business I was going to build, a city I was going to move to, a kind of life that felt, when I imagined it, like mine. Not borrowed, not default, not the path of least resistance. Mine. And then, slowly, in the way that slow things happen, without a single dramatic moment, without any one decision you can point to, those plans got smaller, then quieter, then they stopped coming up at all. I told myself I was being realistic. I told myself that the people who did those things were different from me, luckier than me, built differently. I told myself the comfortable life was the wise one. And I believed it. I believed it completely. Or at least I believed it enough to stop questioning it. That's the thing about a life that's slowly shrinking. It doesn't feel like loss. It feels like maturity. It feels like you're finally understanding how the world actually works. It doesn't feel like loss. It feels like maturity. The morning before the stranger, I woke up at 6:47, hit snooze once, got up, made coffee, checked my phone, went to work, ate lunch at my desk, went home, ate dinner standing at the counter, watched 40 minutes of something I don't remember, went to bed. I did not think about the life I used to want. I'd gotten very good at not thinking about it. That night I slept fine. I usually slept fine. That was the worst part, how fine everything was, how completely, quietly, irreversibly fine. Not a meaningful Tuesday, not a birthday, not an anniversary of anything, not even a particularly bad day. It was just a Tuesday, in the kind of autumn where the light goes gray early and the whole city seems to be moving slightly faster than you are. I was walking back from a coffee shop, the one 4 blocks from my office, the one I go to not because the coffee is better, but because the walk gives me 12 minutes where no one can reach me. 12 minutes of being in motion without having to explain it. That's what I had. That's what I gave myself. 12 minutes. I was almost back. I was already thinking about the email I'd have to write when I got to my desk, the way I always start dreading something before it's even begun, when a person stepped out of the pedestrian flow and stood directly in front of me. I nearly walked into them. They were unremarkable in the way that makes you realize, later, how remarkable that is. Average height, dark coat, a face that I've genuinely tried to reconstruct in the days since, and I can't do it. Every time I try to picture it clearly, the image blurs at the edges, like a photograph taken a half-second too late. I can tell you they weren't young, and they weren't old. I can tell you they looked at me with a steadiness that I don't normally get from strangers on the street. Not aggressive, not warm, specific, like they'd been looking for me, and they'd found me, and they were not surprised. They held out the notebook. Dark green cloth cover, no title, worn at the corners, not destroyed, but clearly used, clearly handled, like something that had lived in the bottom of a bag for a long time. The kind of notebook that has a story before you even open it. I took it. I don't know why. I didn't think. I just reached out and took it, the way you take something when someone holds it toward you with enough certainty. And then they were gone. Not running. They just turned and walked, and the crowd on that pavement absorbed them so completely and so quickly that within 5 seconds, I couldn't have pointed to where they'd gone. I stood there holding the notebook. I said out loud to no one, "Wait." No one waited. I stood there for another full minute, which is a long time to stand still on a busy pavement, and then I looked down at what I was holding. I opened it to the first page, and there, in ink, in a handwriting that was unhurried and deliberate and completely unfamiliar, was my name. Not my full name, not the name on my ID or my lease, the name I had before I simplified it, the name I'd let go of around the same time I let go of everything else, the name I haven't told anyone in years. I closed the notebook, put it in my bag, walked back to the office, sat down at my desk, and I did not open the email I was supposed to write. I just sat there with the notebook in my bag, feeling it there the way you feel something that has weight beyond its size. I knew even then that I was going to open it. I knew the way you know something you're not ready to admit yet. I opened it that night, alone, at my kitchen table, with the overhead light on because I needed everything to feel ordinary and bright. I poured a glass of water, I didn't drink it, and I started reading. I want to be careful about how I tell you this part, because I don't think I can do it justice. And I've tried. I've been trying for a week now, and I keep arriving at the same problem. The words that come to mind are the ones people use when they want to sound moved, and I don't want to sound moved. I want you to feel what I felt, and what I felt was closer to terror than to wonder. The story in the notebook was written in the third person. She or he, the pronoun shifting without explanation, which should have made it feel distant, fictional. It didn't. From the first sentence, the effect was the opposite. Like someone describing you from across a room in enough detail that you check if you've been followed. The first section was about a child, 9 years old, who decided at the age of 9, after one specific moment of public humiliation, that being visible was dangerous. I'll tell you the moment, because it matters. A classroom, a drawing, a teacher who laughed, not cruelly, not intentionally, just casually in front of everyone at something this child had made and loved. It lasted 6 seconds. The child didn't cry. They just quietly reclassified themselves. You are the kind of person who gets it wrong in front of people. It is safer to be smaller. I read that, and I put the notebook down, and I looked at the wall for a while. Because that happened to me. In 4th grade, a drawing of a horse that I'd worked on for 2 evenings. I have never told anyone that story. I'm not sure I've even fully told it to myself, but here it was, in someone else's handwriting, accurate in every detail, including the detail I'd buried deepest, that I never drew again after that day. Not because anyone told me not to, because I quietly decided I was the kind of person who shouldn't. She stopped making things after that. Not all at once. The stopping was gradual, so gradual that it felt like growing up. She told herself she was becoming practical. What she was actually becoming was careful, and what she was becoming careful of was herself. Every dream she quietly released, she justified with logic, and the logic was always sound. That was the cruelest part. You couldn't argue with it. You could only notice years later that the dreams were gone. I kept reading. The next section described someone in their mid-20s who had been on the verge of something, a choice, a leap, a beginning, and who had talked themselves out of it in the space of one night. I knew the night. I knew the exact calculation I'd made, the way I'd sat with a decision that felt enormous and alive, and then by morning had reduced it to something manageable and safe and inert. The notebook knew what I'd told myself. Not yet. Just not yet. And then it knew what I'd never told anyone, that not yet had turned into not anymore, so slowly I'd barely registered the transition. The further I read, the worse it got. Not in a dark way, in the way that honesty is sometimes worse than cruelty, because it's harder to dismiss. It wasn't a catalog of my failures. It was a catalog of my retreats, all the moments I chose smaller, safer, quieter, all the quiet goodbyes I held to the parts of myself that I'd decided were too expensive to keep. I was 3/4 through when I had to stop, not because it was wrong, because it was right, completely, precisely, unforgivably right. And reading it felt like standing in a room you'd sealed shut years ago and finding the air inside exactly the same. I closed the notebook. I went to bed. I lay on my back in the dark, and I asked the ceiling a question I hadn't asked in a long time. How did we get here? I didn't sleep for 3 hours.
If you're new here, hit subscribe right now because this is exactly the kind of story we tell on this channel. And drop a comment.